Black woman fires CEO. After 10 years, no one knew she was the real owner. The moment Vanessa Cole stepped into the boardroom, wearing a navy blue blazer and patent leather heels, silence rippled through the room like a dropped pin in a cathedral. At first, no one recognized her. Then came the squinting, the disbelief, the realization. Graham Minton, CEO of Northbridge Systems for the last decade, leaned back in his leather chair like he'd just been slapped in the face by the past. "Miss Vanessa?" he said, more confused than threatened. "What are you doing here? We're in a meeting." Vanessa didn't flinch. She set a thick manila folder on the walnut table, her voice calm. "I'm not here to clean." She didn't raise her tone. She didn't need to. The man beside Graham, board member Malcolm Reed, cleared his throat. "I'm sorry. This is a confidential quarterly review. Maintenance staff can wait. Mr. Reed," came another voice, this one cool, practiced, and wearing a tailored grey suit. "She has every right to be here." That voice belonged to Clara Jennings, attorney of record for Mrs. Vanessa Cole, majority silent shareholder of Northbridge Systems. The room froze. 12 board members, 1 chandelier, and a truth no one in that building ever saw coming. But 10 years earlier, she was just Miss Vanessa. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., long before the first espresso machine hissed or the sales boys bragged about commission wins, she was already there, pushing a rickety cart across the lobby tiles of Northbridge Systems headquarters in downtown Dallas. Her grey uniform was 2 shades lighter than it had been when she started. Her sneakers, flattened from a decade of sweeping concrete hallways and climbing stairwells with broken elevators, made no sound. Neither did she. To them, she was wallpaper. Miss Vanessa. The janitor. The one who didn't make eye contact and never interrupted their phone calls. But Vanessa heard everything. She heard the CFO brag about burying operating losses in RD fluff. She heard the head of HR giggle about cutting benefits in a way that sounds generous. She heard Graham Minton say, loudly with pride, "If they're smart enough to complain, they're smart enough to quit." She never spoke. She just nodded when told the bathroom soap dispensers were empty, or when someone spilled coffee and barked that it had better be gone before the 2 p.m. client meeting. She remembered every word. But the beginning of her story wasn't in the hallways of a skyscraper. It started in the kitchen of a 1-bedroom apartment in Fort Worth, Texas, at a fold-out table with scratch marks on the edge and a whiteboard above it that always smelled faintly of Expo marker. Vanessa and her husband, Elijah Cole, had a dream. A logistics firm. One that wouldn't rely on old boys' networks or inherited capital, but real know-how and the work ethic that Elijah built from hauling pallets through freezing warehouses at 70. Vanessa, quiet and sharp-eyed, was the planner. She took notes, registered the LLCs, built spreadsheets on a second-hand laptop. She never needed applause, just clarity. When Elijah pitched Northbridge Logistics to their first investor, it was Vanessa's cash that backed it. A life insurance payout from her father, $42,000 that she could have used on a down payment. But she told him, "Put it in your name. I'll stay in the back. Safer that way." He looked at her and asked, "Are you sure?" "I know what I'm doing," she said. And she did. For 7 years, the company grew. They secured contracts with regional retailers, offered overnight delivery faster than the big guys. By year 8, they had 40 employees and a tiny downtown office. And then, it all came undone. Elijah's death was a headline in the Dallas Morning Dispatch. Local entrepreneur killed in I-35 wreck. A jackknifed trailer. A driver too tired to swerve, gone before the ambulance arrived. At the funeral, the man who'd been Elijah's closest business partner, Graham Minton, delivered a eulogy that mentioned Vanessa only once. He thanked her for keeping Elijah grounded, then moved on. 2 weeks later, Graham filed paperwork reassigning Elijah's shares to himself. Vanessa, he assumed, would disappear. He didn't know she had countersigned ownership documents. She had Elijah's will, tucked in a fireproof box.
She had her name quietly attached to the original Articles of Incorporation, an oversight on Graham's part, but a deliberate protection on Elijah's. She could have sued, could have walked in with lawyers and dragged the whole thing into court.
But she didn't, because Vanessa Cole understood the difference between power and timing. 3 months later, a job opening appeared on Northbridge's community portal. Overnight janitorial technician, 3rd shift. Minimum wage, no benefits, uniform provided. She applied using her maiden name, new address, low-profile resume. She started the next week. Graham never looked at her twice. For 10 years, Vanessa cleaned up after men who once sipped whiskey in her living room and laughed at her husband's jokes. She cleaned their offices, scrubbed the tiles outside bathrooms where they whispered about cutting costs. She made notes. She kept receipts. She watched an entire generation of leadership rot from the inside. The tipping point wasn't grand. It was a paper plate, left in the hallway outside the 6th floor executive suite, where no food was allowed. A half-eaten slice of red velvet cake, frosting smeared across the carpet. Fork still stuck in the middle like a flag in conquered land. Vanessa stood over it for a second, not because it was disgusting, but because she'd cleaned that same hallway less than 10 minutes earlier. As she bent down, she heard the voice. "You missed a spot." She turned her head slowly. Graham stood leaning against the glass doorframe, smirking. "Right there," he said, pointing to an invisible speck near her feet. "We've got a client meeting in 5. You think you can actually finish the job this time?" She rose to her feet, holding the plate. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Look, I know y'all don't get paid enough to care, but pretend a little. Makes me feel better." She blinked once. No expression. "I'll make sure it's spotless." He clapped once, a slow, sarcastic clap. "That's the spirit, Miss Vanessa." As he walked away, he tossed over his shoulder, "One day we'll get real cleaning staff in here." She watched him disappear. Then she walked straight past her janitor closet, took the freight elevator to the parking garage, and pulled out her phone. The message she typed was only 5 words. "It's time. Call the meeting." When she stepped back into the building that evening, she didn't push the cart. She carried a briefcase. She didn't speak to the security guard. She didn't nod to the front desk. She rode the elevator to the top floor, past the wall of executive portraits, including Graham's, and paused only once to look at the glass-etched mission statement she helped write all those years ago. She whispered to herself, "Let's see if they remember who built this." Then she kept walking. And not a single soul saw her coming. The whispers started less than an hour after Vanessa Cole left that boardroom. By lunchtime, every floor was buzzing. Executives huddled in offices, HR reps whispered near the elevators, and junior staff checked their phones with wide eyes. The woman they'd seen for years with a mop and a name tag was now, apparently, the majority shareholder. And the CEO. Gone. Security escorted him out in front of everyone, his phone still in his hand, his voice caught mid-threat. Vanessa didn't show up for the rest of that day. She let the silence work for her, let the panic settle, let every person in that building stare at their reflection and ask how they could have missed it. By the following morning she was back, but this time she walked in through the front entrance. No badge swipe. No janitor's cart. She wore a crisp black blouse and high-waisted slacks, her hair pinned up in a sleek twist. People moved aside.
Some out of respect, most out of confusion. She nodded to the receptionist.
Good morning, Gina. The woman blinked. You know my name? I've always known your name. Vanessa rode the elevator to the 8th floor, stepped into her new office, formerly Graham's, and closed the door behind her. But she wasn't alone for long. 10 minutes later, Curtis Lane, Northbridge's chief operating officer, knocked once and entered without waiting. You can't do this, he said, his voice already climbing. There are protocols. Shareholders don't fire executives in surprise meetings. This wasn't properly documented. Vanessa stayed seated behind the desk. Sit down, Curtis. He didn't. You think just because you dug up some ancient paperwork, you can waltz in and flip the board? I didn't flip the board, Vanessa replied. I reminded them who put it there. Curtis's mouth opened, then closed again. I've been here since day one, he snapped. I helped build this company. And I've been here since before day one, she said. I built it with Elijah. I invested before anyone believed in us.
While you were still trying to pitch logistics deals over happy hour, I was balancing the books from our living room. He scoffed. That was 10 years ago. No, Vanessa corrected. That was 14 years ago. You just didn't see me. Curtis shook his head. This is going to cause chaos. The market will react.
The team needs reassurance. What's the plan? She leaned forward. The plan is to clean house. There was a long pause. And what about me? Curtis asked. You going to fire me too? Vanessa met his gaze. That depends. You going to keep pretending I don't belong here? He looked away first. Get back to work, she said. You'll be looped into operations at noon. Until then, sit tight. After he left, Vanessa stood and looked out the window. The Dallas skyline stretched before her, sharp, bright, and indifferent. She let the silence settle. Then she picked up the phone. Clara, it's me. Let's talk. Down in the basement archives, Monica from Records had never received so many emails in one day. She scrolled through requests for policy memos, bonus reports, employee exit reviews, things no one had touched in years. At first, she thought it was just chaos from the CEO transition. But when she saw the sender on the request chain, V. Cole, she nearly choked on her coffee. The janitor was signing internal memos. That night, she called her husband and said, I think something big is happening. Something bigger than a CEO swap. She's digging. 2 floors up, Vanessa sat in the dim light of her office, scanning a stack of personnel files. They were worse than she remembered. She flipped through a thick folder marked Hazelton T., the name of a night shift floor manager who'd been let go 8 months earlier for misconduct. But she remembered Terence Hazelton. A quiet man, reliable, the kind who fixed problems before they became problems. Inside the file was a complaint form he'd filed against his supervisor, Randy Krause, for wage theft and falsifying overtime hours. 3 days after submitting the form, Terence had been fired. No follow-up. No internal review. Vanessa looked at the date. March 2nd. She remembered that day. She had been mopping the 3rd floor hallway when Terence walked past her locker with tears in his eyes. He didn't say anything, just nodded and left. She'd written it down in her notebook. March 2nd, 3rd wrongful termination in 60 days. Back then, she had no power to stop it. But now, she picked up her phone. Clara. Add Krause to the audit list. I want a full review of all managerial terminations in the last 18 months. Copy that. And Clara? Add Curtis to it too. Quietly. Clara paused. Done. The first formal staff address happened that Friday. Vanessa didn't stand at a podium. She didn't bring slides. She stood in the main lobby, in front of a wall of glass trophies collected over the past decade, most of which, she knew, were purchased rather than earned. She faced the crowd. Warehouse workers, sales staff, receptionists, janitors, programmers, people who had never been invited to a strategic address. "Some of you have known me as Miss Vanessa," she began. "The one with the mop. The one who cleaned your break room, restocked your soap dispensers, and disappeared before daylight." A few heads nodded. A few others looked uncomfortable. "I didn't come here today to talk about the past. I came to talk about the future. One where the people who make this company run, the ones who stay late, who skip lunch, who train new hires without being asked, actually get a say." Someone in the back clapped once. Then another, then silence again. "I've read every exit file from the last 5 years. I've seen the overtime logs, the safety reports that were buried, and the raises that mysteriously vanished after approvals." Her eyes scanned the room. "That ends now." This time more applause. Not loud, but real. A man in a reflective vest stepped forward. "What about the people who were pushed out?" Vanessa nodded. "We're contacting all of them, one by one. If they were wrongfully terminated, they'll be offered either reinstatement or formal acknowledgement of the error. Their names will be cleared." He nodded slowly. Someone else shouted, "And Kraus?" Vanessa didn't flinch. "We're reviewing every manager in the system. If you've been complicit in harming your team, you'll answer for it." The silence that followed wasn't fear. It was hope. Careful. Cautious. But it was there. After the crowd dispersed, Vanessa stayed behind. She stood in the same spot where she used to mop spilled coffee and scrub mystery stains from the grout. Now, she stared at the trophies. She reached out, took the largest one off the shelf, and placed it quietly in the nearest trash bin. No one stopped her. Back in her office, Curtis was waiting. He stood, arms crossed, trying to act composed. "Word is spreading. Employees are talking like there's a revolution happening." "There is," Vanessa said, setting her folder down. He hesitated. "So, what's the end game here?" She looked him straight in the eye. "Justice." He laughed once, sharp and bitter. "You really think that's how business works?" "No," she said. "I think that's how it starts to work." And for the first time, Curtis didn't have a comeback. Because deep down, he knew something Vanessa had known for years. The storm had already come. And now, it was cleaning house. The knock came just after 9 p.m. Vanessa was alone in the executive suite, the rest of the building dark except for the glow of her desk lamp and the soft hum of the cleaning crew downstairs. She'd just finished reviewing the restructuring budget when she heard the sharp rap at her office door. "Come in." Clara stepped in, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. But her eyes said it all. Something was wrong. "They leaked it," she said quietly. Vanessa didn't flinch. "What exactly?" "Everything. The shift audits, the termination reviews, the bonus retractions, and you." Vanessa slowly pushed back her chair. "Me?" Clara nodded, jaw tight. The Dallas Business Ledger, full profile. The headline reads, "Janitor turned owner. Vanessa Cole's quiet takeover raises eyebrows." Vanessa stood and reached for the printed sheet Clara held out. Her own face stared back at her from the page, no longer invisible, no longer anonymous. Below the photo was a paragraph that made her stomach tighten. Sources inside Northbridge Logistics allege that Vanessa Cole, former janitorial staff member, is leveraging legal loopholes and emotional rhetoric to disrupt executive operations. Questions remain about her qualifications and intent. Vanessa read it twice, then placed the paper down. They're playing their hand early. Clara exhaled. You think Curtis did it? Vanessa shook her head. Curtis wouldn't be this clumsy. This feels like Meredith. Clara blinked. But Meredith left with Graham. Exactly, Vanessa said. Which makes her the perfect puppet. She still has friends inside, maybe even sympathizers. And if they're leaking strategy documents, we have a breach. Clara hesitated. You want me to pull the comm logs? Not yet, Vanessa said. Let them think I'm on defense. There was a pause. And the press? Clara asked. You want to respond? No, Vanessa said firmly. Not yet. Let them spin. Let the gossip build. Clara frowned. That's risky. Vanessa turned toward the window. Her reflection in the glass looked steady. Calm. But under the surface, the fire was already catching. I didn't work a mop for 10 years just to panic over headlines. She waited a beat, then added, Tell HR to prep an all-staff memo. I want every employee to hear from me directly before Monday. By the next morning, things had already shifted. Curtis showed up early, face carefully composed but noticeably pale. He hovered near Vanessa's office for 5 minutes before finally stepping inside. I just saw the article, he said, feigning concern. They didn't hold back. Vanessa didn't even look up. You're surprised? I'm saying it might be time to consider a public response. A press release. Maybe an op-ed clarifying your role. She closed the folder in front of her and stood. Why is it, Curtis, that the second a woman steps out of the shadow you all helped build, the first thing you want is for her to explain herself? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Vanessa stepped closer. You've been silent through every safety violation, every wrongful termination, every fake audit and bonus payout. But now that the company is finally being held accountable, now you want a press release? This isn't personal, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Vanessa's voice dropped to a near whisper. It's always personal. You just never had to feel it until now. Curtis stiffened. You're making this harder than it has to be. No, she said. I'm finally making it honest. He left without another word. Later that day, Vanessa walked through the loading docks, her old route, the long corridor that wrapped behind the dispatch office and break room. She passed Sam, one of the night crew veterans, who paused mid-sweep when he saw her. Miss Vanessa, Ms. Cole, I don't know what to call you anymore. She smiled. Vanessa is just fine. He glanced around. We heard what happened. Some folks don't know what to believe. You don't have to believe anything yet, she said. Just watch. A moment of silence stretched between them. Then Sam nodded, tapped his broom, and went back to work. Vanessa kept walking. At the far end of the corridor, near the break room vending machines, she paused. That was where she had first overheard the conversation that sparked everything. Graham and Meredith joking about warehouse workers being replaceable as coffee filters. She had stood there with a mop in her hand and rage in her throat. But she'd kept quiet. Then, now that rage was focus. The next twist came sooner than expected. Just before noon, Clara burst into Vanessa's office again, phone in hand. You need to see this. Vanessa took the phone. A video was playing, grainy, obviously recorded in secret. It showed her in the basement archives 2 nights prior, flipping through personnel files, taking photos. No audio, just silent footage of her gathering documents. The headline says you were caught tampering with company files. Vanessa's hands tightened around the phone. Where did this come from? Anonymous email, sent to the board. HR and about 24 news outlets. Vanessa closed her eyes for a moment, then with quiet fury. That badge I used. It was deactivated months ago. I left it in the lost and found drawer to test something. Someone dug it up. Clara's face paled. They're setting you up. No, Vanessa said coldly. They're showing their desperation. She picked up her own phone. Get me Elliot Miles, she told Clara. Now. By the evening, Vanessa sat across from Elliot in her private office, the lights dimmed, the city glowing in the distance. They're trying to bait you, he said, flipping through screenshots. Leak one video. Force you to respond. Drag you into a public war. Vanessa nodded. I know. And what do you want to do? She exhaled, slow and deliberate. I want to burn their safety net. She opened a drawer, pulled out a flash drive, and handed it to him. What's this? Internal audio, she said. 10 years' worth. Board meetings, closed-door reviews, HR whisper sessions. I cleaned their rooms, Elliot. They never thought to stop talking just because a mop was in the corner. Elliot stared at the flash drive like it was a grenade. This changes everything. No, Vanessa said. This proves everything. A pause. You sure you want to go nuclear? She met his gaze. Not yet, she said. But next time they swing, I'm not ducking. I'm swinging back. Elliot nodded once, slid the drive into his case, and stood. You really were invisible to them, weren't you? She smiled without warmth. And now I'm the one signing their checks. He left, the weight of the coming war heavy in his briefcase. Vanessa stayed, staring out at the city. They'd tried to smear her, humiliate her, push her back into the shadows, but they'd made one fatal mistake. They reminded her what silence felt like, and she would never return to it again. Vanessa stood at the edge of the 4th-floor balcony, coffee in hand, watching the early trucks roll through the North Bridge gates. Her expression was unreadable, but behind the stillness, her mind was turning like clockwork. Inside, the building was buzzing. Rumors were multiplying. Her name floated through break-room conversations and Slack messages. Some employees spoke of her with awe, others with confusion. A few still refused to believe it was true. The janitor was the owner. Couldn't be. Had to be a stunt, or a hostile acquisition, or some social media experiment. Let them talk, Vanessa thought. But what she hadn't anticipated was how fast her presence would rattle the board. It started that afternoon. She was midway through a one-on-one with Rashad Lively, the new logistics supervisor she had promoted from within, when her assistant buzzed through the line. Ms. Cole, Mr. Blaine from legal is here. Says it's urgent. Vanessa excused herself and walked down the corridor. Blaine was already pacing near her office, sweat collecting along his collar. They filed an injunction, he blurted before she even sat down. Curtis and a faction from the Legacy Board. They're trying to freeze your voting rights pending a review of ownership legitimacy. Vanessa let the words sink in. You're saying they want to put my title on trial? They're claiming that the original transfer from Roland Jenkins, your late husband, was improperly filed. They say the notary on the paperwork had a suspended license, that you fabricated it. Vanessa leaned back in her chair and gave a long, quiet exhale. That document was filed over a decade ago. I know, but that's why it's dangerous. They're not trying to win this in court. They're trying to dirty your name in the press and spook investors. Her voice was calm, but her words sharp. We've anticipated this. Do we have the counters? Better. We have the notary, alive and well, certified and willing to testify. Vanessa nodded once. Then we hold, we don't blink, and Blaine. He paused at the door. Tell them if they want war, they better bring something heavier than a dusty notary complaint. Because I'm done playing nice. He left without another word. By sunset, the press had it. Stock price dipped 2 points. Anonymous blog posts painted her as an opportunist with a vendetta. Twitter was a mess of hashtags. Boardroom. Janitor trended for 2 hours straight. At home, Clara paced the length of Vanessa's kitchen. "They're painting you like you broke in through the back door," she said. "Like you found a glitch in the system and exploited it." Vanessa sipped her tea and said, "Good. Let them believe that. Because the truth is scarier." "What's the truth?" "That I walked through the front door every night for 10 years, and they never once looked up." Clara stopped pacing. "So what do we do now?" Vanessa looked her straight in the eye. "We stop waiting for permission." The next morning, Vanessa called an emergency leadership meeting. Not for the board, but for the department heads. Drivers, coordinators, warehouse leads, call center supervisors. The people who kept the machine running. They packed into the main conference room, confused but curious. Vanessa stood at the front with no slides, no flash. Just her voice. "You've probably heard things about me. Some of them true. Some of them twisted. So let me tell you the one thing that matters." She paused. "I am not here to take power. I am here to return it." A murmur rolled through the room. For too long, decisions in this building have been made behind closed doors by people who haven't touched a pallet or answered a client call in years. That ends now. She pointed to a whiteboard behind her, where a phrase was written in thick black ink. "Leadership without accountability is a lie." "I've been told I don't have the background. That I don't understand scale, that I'm emotional. Let me be clear. Yes, I am emotional. Because I care. Because I've scrubbed coffee stains off that same tile while listening to people like Graham Wexler mock your overtime slips." A ripple of recognition passed through the crowd. "I don't want your loyalty. I want your honesty. I want you to tell me what's broken, so we can fix it together." The room erupted. Applause, nods, voices rising. The walls echoed with something the building hadn't heard in years. Belief. Later that afternoon, as she walked the halls, a young temp named Javier stopped her near the elevator. "You really work nights here?" he asked. "I did. Even after they cut your pay. I had to see what they would do when they thought no one was watching." Javier hesitated, then said, "They're scared of you now." Vanessa smiled, but it was tired. "No," she said. "They're scared of what I remind them, that you don't need to wear a suit to carry power." He nodded.
Well, thanks for not forgetting us. I couldn't forget you if I tried. That night, in a secured conference room downtown, Curtis met with 4 legacy board members. "This isn't just about Vanessa," he hissed. "It's about precedent.
If we let her take full control, every private equity firm in the country is going to look at us like amateurs." "But the PR is killing us," one man muttered. "Her story's getting traction, and if that notary testifies, our injunction gets tossed in a heartbeat." Curtis leaned forward. "Then we stop her before she gets there." Silence. He dropped a manila folder on the table. Inside were surveillance photos. Vanessa at a diner. Vanessa at her old janitorial locker. Vanessa in front of the county records office. One of the board members blinked. "Are we following her?" Curtis's voice was ice. "We're protecting our investment." Back at Northbridge, Vanessa was finalizing a proposal for internal restructuring when her office phone rang. "Private number," she answered, a man's voice disguised by software. "Drop your claim or your family history goes public. I know what happened to Roland, and I know you covered for him." The line went dead. Vanessa didn't move, not for a full minute. Then she reached for her locked drawer, pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. Inside, next to a yellowed photo of her and Roland on their wedding day, was a sealed envelope, labeled, "If they come for me." She opened it and found everything she needed. Not revenge, not even protection, but clarity. Because she knew what they were willing to do. And now, she knew exactly how far she had to go. Vanessa's fingers tightened around the edges of the envelope as the voice on the phone echoed in her mind. Covered for him? What did they think they had on her? She stood slowly, walked to the far side of her office, and pulled down a dusty binder from a locked cabinet. Inside was every paper, receipt, and sworn affidavit she'd ever had, notarized in connection with Roland's estate. She'd spent years double and triple securing the legal trail that would someday be weaponized against her. It was all there. Clean, verified. But that call changed something. Not her plans, but her tempo. They were getting sloppy, desperate. Threatening her didn't scare her. It confirmed she was close. The next morning, she was at the office early, not in her blazer this time, but in worn jeans, her Northbridge hoodie zipped halfway. A look from another life, on purpose. She moved through the loading dock without security, walked the warehouse floor with a clipboard, just like the old days. Some employees stared in confusion. Others whispered. She found Curtis Banning in the second-floor glass-paneled conference room. He was dressed too sharp for a man who'd just filed an injunction that got publicly rejected hours earlier. Vanessa didn't knock. She walked in, stood at the end of the table and locked eyes with him. "You had me followed," she said. Curtis didn't flinch. "I have no idea what you're talking about. You sent someone to watch me, stalk me. Threaten me. You have any proof of that?" he asked, feigning innocence like it was a reflex. "I don't need proof. I need memory." "Because you should remember who taught Roland how to structure operational chains. Who signed the damn documents when you were too scared to talk to a bank manager. I was never just the janitor, Curtis." "I was the architect." Curtis stood, voice low. "You don't belong up there." She tilted her head. "No, I belong exactly here." "That's the part you keep forgetting." She turned and left. Downstairs, Rashad was waiting near her office. "Vanessa," he said, holding up his tablet. "You need to see this." He flipped it around. Security footage. A still shot from a warehouse camera. Someone tampering with brake lines on one of the outbound trucks. Vanessa squinted. "That's one of our contractor drivers," Rashad said. "But he's not on the schedule for this shift, and that truck was headed to a medical supplies distributor." She looked closer. The man had no face visible, but the badge clipped to his hip was fake. Wrong color. "Wrong scan code," she whispered. "Curtis really is willing to burn this whole place down." Rashad swallowed hard. "Do you want me to call the police?" "No," she said. "Not yet." That night, Vanessa met with her attorney, Blaine, and Clara at a coffee shop just off I-94. The lights were dim, and a jazz record played softly under their voices. "They're escalating," Vanessa said. "Fake drivers, brake tampering, threats. This isn't corporate maneuvering anymore, it's criminal." "We can push for a full forensic audit of board activity," Blaine said. "Force their hand." "And if we do that?" Clara asked. "What happens to the employees?" Vanessa looked at her. "We lose control of the narrative, which means we take it back before they flip it." She leaned in. "I'm going public." Blaine blinked. "You're serious?" "I've been serious since day one. But now, I'm going to make sure they don't just fall. They're remembered for how they fell." The next day, Vanessa made a call to her old college roommate, now a reporter for a national business magazine. That evening, the story went live. From janitor to owner, the secret rise of Vanessa Cole. It trended within hours. Photos of Vanessa in a Northbridge uniform from 10 years ago were posted beside screenshots of her recent boardroom takeover. The story included the documented timeline of her investment, her silence, and her legal control over Roland's shares. No embellishments, just the truth. Raw, clean. And in that moment, something changed. The employees rallied, one by one, warehouse drivers, office admins, night staff, people who had never spoken a word above a whisper started posting their own stories. Hashtag, she was always here. I remember when she helped me lift a busted printer into the dumpster. She left extra gloves in our locker every winter. She asked about my daughter by name when she was in the hospital. Curtis, meanwhile, called an emergency press conference to deny any wrongdoing, but his tone cracked. His hands shook. Reporters weren't biting. And then came the twist. A whistleblower email landed in Blaine's inbox. Subject line, "You don't know what Curtis buried." Attached, a spreadsheet of embezzled bonuses disguised as logistical surcharges. Recipient, Curtis Banning. Sender, Meredith Sharp, his former assistant. When confronted, Curtis panicked. Tried to blame Wexler, but Wexler had already skipped town 2 weeks earlier. That afternoon, Vanessa walked into the boardroom. No blazer, no documents, just a single sheet of paper and a quiet fury. She dropped it on the table. "This," she said, "is a formal petition to dissolve Curtis Banning's board seat and refer him to the district attorney for financial misconduct. Signed by majority shareholders." "Effective immediately." Curtis stood, mouth open. "You can't do this," he said. Vanessa leaned in, quiet. "I'm not doing it. You did it. I'm just turning on the lights." Security came 10 minutes later. He didn't speak as they walked him out. No protests, no apologies. Just silence. That night, Vanessa sat outside the Northbridge building, her back against the concrete wall, watching the sky turn purple. Clara sat beside her. "You good?" Clara asked. Vanessa didn't answer right away. Then she said, "They always thought I was cleaning floors. What they never saw was that I was cleaning house." And she smiled. Not from victory, but from freedom. The next morning, Vanessa stood in front of the mirror, tying her headscarf with quiet purpose. She didn't dress in silk today, or the navy blazers that made her blend in with executives. She wore an old white button-up, slightly faded, sleeves rolled to her forearms. The kind Roland used to wear on shipping days. It wasn't a statement. It was a memory. Downstairs, Rashad was already waiting in the conference room, laptop open, slides ready. Clara stood beside the coffee station, nervously stirring creamer into her cup for the third time. "Any word yet?" Vanessa asked as she walked in. Rashad nodded. "Legal says Curtis hasn't responded to the dissolution. Meredith has officially ghosted. And Wexler's lawyer filed to drop him. Says he hasn't been able to reach him in a week." Vanessa pulled out a chair and sat. "So now it's our mess." "Not entirely," Clara added, handing her a folder. "We've got support. 28 managers across departments have signed a joint letter backing your restructuring plan." Vanessa flipped the folder open and scanned the signatures. Some names she recognized instantly. Luis from maintenance, Jasmine from HR, Shonda from payroll. Others were new, but they all shared one thing. They stayed. That afternoon, Vanessa called a general assembly. Not the board, not the suits upstairs. Everyone. The email read, "Company-wide meeting, 4:30 p.m., all floors. All teams, come as you are." By 4:25, the atrium was full. Receptionists, warehouse crew, delivery drivers in steel-toe boots, admins in cardigans, even old Mr. Patel from the mailroom, leaning on his cane. They filled the space shoulder to shoulder, some skeptical, some hopeful, all curious. Vanessa stepped up to the mic without preamble. I want to start by saying something no one in this building has said in a very long time. Thank you. She let the silence sit for a moment. I know many of you didn't know who I was. Some of you still don't believe I'm the majority owner. That's fine. What matters more is that you're here, and we're not going back to the way things were. She held up a slip of paper. This is a copy of the previous bonus structure. One executive took home $75,000 in one quarter, while driver overtime was denied, and health benefits were quietly trimmed. That ends now. A low murmur buzzed through the crowd. Effective immediately, we're reinstating overtime pay, reviewing all wrongful terminations, and restructuring leadership. We'll promote from within, based on merit. And for the first time in over a decade, we're forming an employee advisory committee. You will have a voice, a seat, and I will sit there with you. A young woman raised her hand. How do we know it's not just another promise? Vanessa didn't blink. Because I've been the one mopping up after broken promises for 10 years. I'm not here to sell you change. I'm here to build it with you. Someone clapped, then another. Then the room burst into applause. It didn't feel polished. It didn't feel staged. It felt earned. Later that night, as the building emptied out and the echo of something new settled over the Northbridge headquarters, Vanessa sat on the loading dock steps, sipping from a mug of lukewarm tea. Clara joined her. You ever think about walking away? Clara asked quietly. All the time, Vanessa said. But I didn't build this just to hand it over when it got hard. You could have taken them down years ago. I could have, she nodded. But the story would have been different. It would have been a lawsuit, a headline, then silence. Nothing changes when the noise fades, but when people see it, when they feel the shift under their own feet, that's how it lasts. A gust of wind kicked up the edge of a loose paper near their feet. Vanessa picked it up. It was one of the flyers for the new employee rep elections. She smiled. Let them pick their leaders. That's the real beginning. But just as the calm set in, Rashad burst through the side door, phone in hand. Vanessa, you need to see this. He handed her the phone. A grainy photo showed Curtis Banning exiting a black SUV outside a corporate real estate office in Atlanta. The caption underneath read, Former exec from Northbridge tied to silent buyout attempt of rival logistics firm. Vanessa's jaw clenched. He's trying to start over, Clara said. Somewhere else. Same playbook. He's not even ashamed, Rashad muttered. He's just moving like nothing happened. Vanessa handed back the phone. Then we make sure everyone remembers. She stood, stretched her shoulders, and looked toward the skyline, where the sun was bleeding orange into the evening. They thought they could cut corners and get away clean, she said. But you can't rebuild on rot. Eventually the truth caves the whole thing in. What now? Clara asked. Vanessa looked back at the building. Now we show them how to do it right. So when the next Vanessa comes along, she doesn't have to hide. That night, in the quiet hum of a company that finally felt like its own, Vanessa didn't plan a battle. She planned a future. It started with a letter. No return address. Just a cream-colored envelope slid under the door of Vanessa's office sometime after 9 p.m. Rashad had already gone home. Clara was upstairs in HR, finalizing the reinstatement offers. The building was almost empty except for the cleaning staff and security. Vanessa had stayed late, combing through old vendor contracts, trying to untangle the web of deals Curtis had left behind. When she picked up the envelope, she expected another complaint, maybe a resignation from someone afraid of the changes. but what she found inside made her sit upright. It was a copy of an internal memo from Silverhook Freight, a fast-growing logistics firm in Atlanta, outlining a sudden proposal to acquire 3 of Northbridge's regional warehouse leases. The contact listed on the proposal: Curtis Banning. Vanessa didn't curse. She didn't throw the letter or slam the desk. She just whispered, "Coward," under her breath. It wasn't the attempt that shocked her. It was the brazenness. The man hadn't even let the dust settle before trying to poach the company's backbone. 3 regional hubs, 2 of which housed 60% of their Midwest contracts. It was sabotage, and it wasn't just Curtis. Later that night, when Clara and Rashad joined her back at the office, Vanessa dropped another folder on the table. "You were right. Curtis is building a new ship with pieces of ours, but he's not working alone." Clara opened the folder and sucked in a breath. "Meredith Chandler?" Vanessa nodded. "She's already filed paperwork as COO of a shell company tied to Silverhook, the same week she ghosted the board here." Rashad leaned back. "We knew they were snakes, but this is a whole coup. And they're betting we won't make it public," Vanessa said. "They're betting I won't fight." "What do you want to do?" Clara asked. Vanessa looked out the window. The reflection in the glass stared back. Not the janitor, not the shadow, not the woman cleaning around boardroom chairs, but the owner. The woman who had built the bones of the company while the world looked the other way. "I want them to know they picked the wrong legacy to bet against." She didn't wait. The next morning, she filed an emergency injunction to freeze all regional lease transfers. Attached were years of internal emails, documented budget misappropriations, and a report prepared by Rashad showing how Curtis and Meredith had siphoned off key vendors into personal accounts before the leadership shift. Vanessa didn't send it to Silverhook's lawyers. She sent it to the press. By noon, local business news picked it up. By 2 p.m., Forbes ran a digital headline: "Black female majority owner exposes power grab at logistics giant." The article included photos from 10 years ago, grainy snapshots of Vanessa pushing a janitor's cart in the same hallways she now owned. One photo showed her mopping a marble floor while Curtis, in a navy suit, walked past her, eyes on his phone, never looking up. It went viral. Vanessa turned off her phone at some point in the afternoon. The texts, the calls, the congratulations, they didn't matter. She had work to do. By Friday, Silverhook pulled out of the regional lease deal. Curtis went silent. But Meredith didn't. That evening, Vanessa received an email from a burner address. No name. No sign-off, just a video attachment. She clicked play. It was a shaky recording, taken at night, showing a black SUV outside Vanessa's home. A man got out, circled the driveway, took photos, then drove off. Vanessa's hands tightened on the desk. Clara was in the next room. Rashad was still on the call with security. She hit print. The video was grainy, but the frame caught the license plate just long enough to be traced. It matched a vehicle registered to a private firm in Atlanta, used frequently by Meredith's old team. This wasn't business anymore. It was intimidation. Vanessa stood and walked into the break room where Clara and Rashad had gathered, talking over potential retaliation strategies. "We're done waiting," she said. They turned. "I want full audits. Every account Meredith touched in the last 5 years. Every deal Curtis signed that went under the radar. If there's dirt, we dig it. If there's a fire, we pour gasoline." Clara nodded. "You sure you want to go public again?" "I didn't come this far to whisper," Vanessa said. "If they want to play dirty, fine. But we play smart." "We show the people watching that the only thing more dangerous than a system built to silence black women is one that fails to keep them out." Rashad cracked a grin. "Damn, I'll get the files." That weekend, Vanessa held a closed-door meeting with select department leads. She laid everything out. No sugarcoating, no vague promises. They tried to dismantle what we're rebuilding, she told them. They counted on silence, on fear. But I'm done playing defense. I didn't clean around their mess for 10 years just to leave the room when it got hard. If they want a war, they can have one. But this time, it's on our terms. Someone in the back clapped. Another stood up. Vanessa looked around the room. Warehouse workers, payroll clerks, drivers, people who had never stepped foot in the boardroom before, people she was going to bring with her. They're watching us now, she said. Let's give them something they'll never forget. And they did. On Monday morning, Northbridge Logistics filed a civil suit against Curtis Banning and Meredith Chandler for breach of fiduciary duty, intellectual property theft, and conspiracy to defraud shareholders. The industry reeled, but inside Northbridge, the hallways were calm. Janitors still cleaned the glass doors. Drivers still hauled freight across the country, and Vanessa stood in her office, looking out at a company that no longer just had her name on paper, but her voice in every wall. The storm they tried to send. It didn't break her. It revealed her. The courtroom was colder than expected. Not in temperature, but in tone. Crisp, clinical. The kind of room where voices didn't echo but sank like stones. Vanessa sat at the front row, not behind the plaintiff's table, not in the gallery, just watching. Calm, unshaken. Curtis Banning sat 3 chairs down, flanked by attorneys in dark suits. He looked smaller than he used to, not in size, but in presence. He wore a forced grin like armor, one he'd polished for decades and now couldn't seem to keep straight. His jaw clenched every time the word embezzlement was said aloud, and when the phrase breach of fiduciary duty landed like a gavel in the room, he didn't flinch. But Meredith did. Vanessa noticed it. That twitch in Meredith's cheek. The slight curl of her lip when the judge read through the charges. They weren't just being sued. They were being exposed, and nothing terrifies people like them more than exposure. Clara sat next to Vanessa, her fingers skimming through her notes. Rashad stood near the door, talking softly with Northbridge's lead counsel. Everything had come down to this. It wasn't just about money. It was about memory. About 15 years of being invisible. About a company stolen, warped, and treated like a ladder to climb before being kicked aside. But now, the whole room listened. The judge looked down at the stack of evidence. The court finds substantial cause to move forward with the civil complaint against Mr. Banning and Ms. Chandler. We are also recommending further investigation by the state's Attorney General's office for criminal misconduct. Curtis looked like someone had just drained the air from his lungs. Meredith reached for a water bottle with a shaky hand. Their attorneys immediately began whispering back and forth, already calculating how much damage control was still possible, but Vanessa didn't move. Didn't smile, didn't blink. She just stood up and walked out. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Reporters, employees, community members, people with signs that read, "Listen to the quiet ones," and "Justice for the workers." One young reporter pushed forward. "Mrs. Ellison, did you ever expect this moment?" Vanessa paused. "No, I never expected it." "But I prepared for it." The reporter tilted her head. "What do you want people to take from this?" Vanessa's eyes scanned the crowd, then settled on a janitor standing in the back. Grey polo, name tag that said Hector, quietly watching just like she used to. "I want them to know that power doesn't always look like a title. Sometimes it's in your silence. Sometimes it's in what you endure. And sometimes it's in what you refuse to ignore." A murmur swept through the crowd. Back at Northbridge, things were different, not louder, just clearer. The front desk now had a welcome sign in 3 languages. The driver's lounge had been refurbished with real chairs, not folding metal ones. And in the executive wing, yes, still there, a small brass plaque had been mounted on the wall. It read, "This company was built by those no one saw coming. We see you now." The janitorial staff had a new schedule. Better pay. A full benefits package, not a bonus. A standard. During a company-wide town hall 2 weeks later, Vanessa took the stage. No podium. No projection screen, just her voice. "When I first walked these halls, I was called Miss V. No one asked where I came from. No one cared what I saw, but I remembered everything, every word. Every policy that hurt someone, every joke made at the expense of the people who kept this company alive. And now that I'm here, I'm not just fixing it. I'm rewriting it." She paused, scanning the faces. Curtis and Meredith thought they could strip value from people and call it strategy. They thought leadership meant control. But real leadership? It listens. It remembers. And it takes responsibility. Someone in the back shouted, "Say that again." Vanessa smiled. "It takes responsibility." The applause didn't come in one wave. It rolled through slowly, building from the back, until the whole room was clapping, not like employees, but like witnesses. Like survivors, like family. After the meeting, a young man approached her. He was maybe 20, still wearing a shipping badge around his neck. Nervous. "Ms. Ellison," he said. I just wanted to say thank you. My mom used to work here. She cleaned this place for 8 years before she got let go." Vanessa's expression softened. What was her name? Trina Salazar. Vanessa smiled. She left a mark. "I remember her. Tell her she was never invisible." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I will." Weeks turned into months. The lawsuits dragged on, but Curtis disappeared from public view. Meredith issued a hollow apology through her legal rep, then vanished into the corporate fog. But Vanessa didn't fade. She visited every warehouse, shook every hand, sat in on meetings. Listened more than she spoke. Built trust like it was her first day on the job. One night, Rashad found her standing in the break room, quietly watching 2 employees laugh over reheated leftovers. "You ever going to take a vacation?" he asked. Vanessa chuckled. "Maybe." "When the carpet stops squeaking and the vending machine finally works." "You did it, you know," he said. "You turned it around." She shook her head. "No." "We're still turning, but at least we're moving together." Then she added softly, "I just wanted them to feel seen." "They do," Rashad replied. "Now the rest of the world sees you too." She turned to him. "Good, because I'm not done yet. And neither is the story. If this story reminded you of someone, the quiet one in the room, the overlooked, the underestimated, then share it. Let it live. Because someone out there, sweeping the floor, fixing the server, stacking the boxes, is more powerful than anyone knows. Let them know. We see them now. We're not done, and we're not leaving anyone behind.